Am I the a-hole for telling my parents they have to pay for my wedding? I, female 28, am getting married to a pretty great guy, 32. He is a teacher and he is very happy with his decision to become a teacher while I work for a tech company, and we do pretty well financially. We have been together for 4 years and have finally decided to get married. His parents are happy and mine are overjoyed. One small wrinkle is that my parents expect us to have a massive church wedding with a few hundred guests, while we were thinking Jamaica this summer during his time off. We are willing to do what my parents want, but I am unwilling to foot the bill. My mom and I met with a wedding planner for an estimate, $35,000 to $45,000. If we go to the resort we have picked out, it will cost like $10,000, and that includes paying for his parents and nephew to join us. My parents know how much money I earn and are insisting that I pay for the wedding myself. But we have been very clear. If they want to show off to their friends, they can pay for it. We even volunteered to throw in the money we would have spent on my in-laws for the destination wedding we want. But my mom says I'm being an a-hole by denying her the chance to see her only daughter married in front of friends and family. I'm not. I'm just not willing to pay for it. My parents can afford to pay for the wedding. It might just mean putting off replacing their car this year. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. If they want the $40,000 wedding, then they pay for it. Otherwise, stick to your $10,000 plan. In fact, do that anyway. That's what you and your partner want, and this is your wedding. Paying for someone's wedding means you get a say. By rights, that means not paying for the wedding means you don't get a say. Fair's fair. I never understood that mentality. As a parent, I would want to help pay for my child's wedding simply because I love them and want them to be happy. I would not use it as a leverage to force my desires or ideas on a wedding that's not even mine. That's super controlling in my opinion. Most people start there, but assume their kid will think how they think and get frustrated with the difference between what they assumed and what is happening. It's a pretty self-centered way to parent, and only in rare cases where the kids are genuinely using the money in an inhospitable way do I think there is any excuse to intervene. For example, no chairs for a long ceremony when elderly relatives are invited or in-laws get an amazing table up front, but the paying parents are at the rejects table in the back by the bathroom. That sort of thing. Not the a-hole. If it's that important to your parents, then they can pay for it. But beware of any strings that might come along with them footing the bill. They can have the wedding any way they want if they pay for it. The only thing set in stone is the date. I think they are going to find it difficult to get a venue and the rest set up at a time frame they have. My mother wanted a bigger wedding than I was willing to organize, so she did everything. I got my stress-free day and she got to watch me get married. Bonus, she paid for everything. I just showed up. Even if I had $40,000, I would not spend that amount of money of a wedding. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. This is why I eloped. Lol. Honestly, the audacity of your mother to expect a wedding you don't want, and also not want to pay for it is astounding. Do what makes you happy. Don't back down on this. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not giving my newly engaged cousin my grandmother's engagement ring? So, my 22 female cousin Becky, 22 female, got engaged over New Year's. When Becky's fiancé asked my uncle's permission, my uncle offered my grandma's engagement ring. She died when we were 3 because he thought that he had a ring. The ring had already passed through 2 generations to get to my grandmother, so he wanted to continue the tradition. The ring wasn't willed to anyone, nor did she verbally say who she wanted the rings to go to as far as I'm aware. But my uncle thought that he had it because he was the oldest brother. Anyway, it turns out that after my grandma died, in the process of clearing out her flat and stuff, my dad ended up with her engagement ring and wedding band. And over COVID lockdowns, we were having a clear out to see what we could donate to charity shops, and we found the rings with some of my grandma's other stuff in the attic. I asked my dad if I could have the engagement ring because I think it's pretty, emerald and diamond. I paid to have the ring cleaned, replated, and have the settings checked. I now wear the ring fairly regularly because since starting my career after uni, I've started to wear more jewelry because I think it's a simple way of looking more put together and polished. My uncle, aunt, and cousin, we're both only children, have been hunting around their house for the ring since late October, and Becky's fiancé proposed with some custom jewelry. My parents and I didn't know about any of this at the time. Over the weekend, Becky had her engagement party. I wore the ring not thinking much of it, because it went with what I was wearing, a green velvet jumpsuit. Of course, Becky and my uncle recognized the ring right away, accusing my dad of stealing from under them when my grandma died. He was there first, and my parents did the majority of the packing because she lived closer to us, and then accusing me of wearing it just to spite them, and telling me that I ruined the evening and demanding that I give the ring over. I told them I didn't know they were looking for the ring, and if they had mentioned it to me or my parents, we could have told them I had a ring. I don't want to give her the ring because I consider it my ring, as it ended up with my dad and he gave it to me. I paid for it to be resized, /cleaned, /replated, /settings fixed. It's my favorite / most worn piece of jewelry because I like how it looks and the sentimental value of it being my grandma's. Because I don't really remember her, so it helps me feel connected to her. And my grandma expressed no preference to who the ring went to. They argue that Becky should get the ring because she's the daughter of the eldest son. My aunt is the only girl and currently has no children or plans to get married. And Becky got engaged first, so she should get the ring for that. Not the a-hole. If he didn't know he didn't have the ring for 19 years, he doesn't deserve the heirloom. And not mentioning the missing item to his own brother shows his narcissism of being eldest. And finally, no will? Finders keepers, sister. Keep wearing it in good faith. That was my thinking too. They for 19 years didn't realize they didn't have the ring. When you clear someone's house that you love, you remember what items you took and where they are. At least I do anyway. Would be interested in what a court would rule, as the argument would likely be that it's been safely in your dad's possession for years, was given to you by your dad, and you invested in having it made to fit you and be restored. I would be surprised if a ring was suddenly taken to give to another sibling's daughter who has got engaged first. And Opie acquired a ring in good faith as well. It's passed to a third party who actually spent money on it in reliance of the previous owner's representations. Many common law countries will likely recognize Opie as having some equitable interest in the property. Don't worry about such comments, Opie. This is a bit of a no-a-hole situation. With things like heirloom jewelry, especially something that would be a sentimental piece like an engagement ring, it should be discussed about where it goes. Once your dad found it, he should have mentioned it to his brother and they could have made a decision together. The gems could have been split to make both of you girls a ring, or they could have been kept whole and the determination of where it went could have been made collaboratively. You're now in an unfortunate position where you're attached to the ring, and your uncle and cousin are feeling like this was a bit sneaky and underhanded by your dad. Everyone is allowed to feel upset here, and truthfully, I think either everyone is going to need to be willing to compromise or cut their losses, but there will be an added strain to their relationship. You won't be wrong to keep the ring. We found both Grandma's and Grandpa's wedding bands at the same time, that I got cleaned and replated at the same time. I'm more than happy to let her have those rings. That way, her and her fiancé can have a matching set with a sentimental value. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not being able to pay for my parents' mortgage? My parents didn't buy a house when I was younger as my family couldn't afford it, so we lived in a rented house all the time. My dad used to work mostly lowly paid jobs, and my mom never really wanted to work. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18 and started working full-time in 2019 and moved in with my boyfriend. My boyfriend had a deposit for a house at a time and asked me to put down my name on the house and mortgage, about half the payment. We bought our house in 2020 and it was relatively cheap. Since I got a house, my parents have been accusing me that I don't help them financially. They kept on persuading me to get a mortgage in my name for them. I kept on refusing as I didn't want to take another mortgage in my name and put myself in more debt. That's if the bank would even allow me to have more than one mortgage. Anyway, my parents got the hint that I won't get a mortgage for them. So, they both decided to work as many hours as they could to qualify for a bigger mortgage. My dad would always call me and guilt-trip me that my mom is only working because I wouldn't help them. To be honest, I felt like even if I applied for the mortgage and somehow got it, then I would have to pay for it as well, which I clearly couldn't afford. Last year, they saved up enough to put down a deposit for a house. They went and bought a new build, which tend to be more expensive as well. They moved in the house last month. Since then, my mom decided that she doesn't want to work and keeps on calling to help them to pay for their mortgage. Both of my parents keep on insisting that I should pay at least half of it, which is about £600 a month. I keep on telling them that with everything going up in price, I barely have anything left at the end of the month, and I won't be able to pay. I don't really feel like talking to my parents anymore. They keep on making me feel guilty for their situation. Am I the a-hole because I can't afford to help them? Now for the top comments. We both know the only reason you're here is because you feel guilty, not because you don't know if you're an a-hole or not. You feel guilty because the people that you owe nothing to are guilt-tripping you instead of doing what they need to for their lives. Obviously, you're not the a-hole, but your parents definitely are. I have no idea to the extent of your relationship, but me personally, I just start hanging up anytime the conversation gets there. Oh, someone's at the door. I'll have to call you back. Pizza's here. Later. I have to take a dump. Bye. And only whenever this group of grown adults that brought you into a world you never asked to be brought into start hounding you about paying their bills for them when you don't even live with them. Just know that they'd be financially using you if you don't immediately leave. It is the way they talk to me now that makes me question whether it is my fault. I have been trying to be strong and not fall for their words for a few years now, but I will try to use your tactics when a conversation gets there from now on. Your mother doesn't want to work and expects you to essentially do that for her. For the love of everything that's holy, never give them money, not even in an emergency. Because after the first emergency, the second will be there soon enough. It is absolutely not your fault. Good parents would never dream of pulling this nonsense on their child. I'm sorry your parents suck, but you need not, and should not, pay their mortgage because your mom is too lazy to work like a normal human being. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother he never deserved to be a father? I have custody of my 12-year-old nephew Dex. My brother is Dex's dad. He and Dex's mom divorced when Dex was 2. When Dex was 4, brother met his current wife Shanna, and when Dex was 6, his mom died. A couple of years later, Shanna got pregnant and went into premature labor. My niece was stillborn, and a hysterectomy had to be performed to save Shanna's life after serious complications. It broke her. She was lost, and in her grief, she attempted to cling extra hard to Dex and have him be the child she could no longer have biologically. But Dex was not Shanna's biggest fan, and he did not want to just sit with her all the time and pretend she was his mom. My brother decided Shanna should adopt Dex. He was so hard on Dex for wanting to hang out with friends or for being in his room instead of around Shanna. She became more and more possessive of Dex. My husband and I noticed, and we stepped in to try and help. But my brother became angry and kicked us out and told us we were not helping Shanna. For several months, Dex was cut off from the rest of the family and went through a lot at home. In the end, he had a huge outburst in school, and CPS became involved. And from there, Dex was removed from my brother and placed with my husband and I. It was supposed to be temporary, but my brother failed repeatedly to change how he treated Dex. At that point, he was treating his son like he was the worst person in the world. Dex told me his dad called him evil after everything that happened with Shanna. He even told him he'd hate Dex forever for not helping her, when he could easily. It seems Shanna eventually did seek help, and my brother decided this was enough to get Dex back, but CPS and the judge disagreed. He then cornered me at Christmas and told me that he deserved to be back in his son's life, and that we were punishing him for parenting decisions that many others would make in his shoes. Meaning trying to force his kid to become his wife's kid, to gloss over the loss of her own child and her ability to have a child in the future. I told him he didn't deserve to be a father after the way he treated his own child. I told him Dex should have always been at the forefront of his mind, that he never should have verbally mistreated him for not faking things for Shanna. I said as a husband, he should have gotten her some real, professional help, and he should have supported his son in saying he didn't want Shanna to become his new mom, instead of calling him evil. Instead of telling him he was disgusted with him or comparing him to a historical figure who was responsible for the deaths of so many people. This actually happened on multiple occasions. I told him he should be ashamed of himself and leave Dex to live a happier and healthier life without him. My brother was furious. He even attempted to confront me again at work. A friend of his actually told me I should have been more understanding, and even if I'm angry, it was too harsh to say he didn't deserve to be a father. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Their behavior was so problematic that CPS had to remove him, and he then repeatedly failed to change his behavior thereafter. It's good Shanna's getting the help she needs, but it sounds like your brother still needs a fair amount of help too. Until then, do what's in the best interest of the child. I hope they don't decide to adopt or foster. They would both be terrible parents. The brother is incredibly cruel and abusive, while Shanna is too fragile and unstable. Having an open or even a history of CPS would prevent you from being a foster care parent, at least in the area I am from. Hopefully, private adoption agencies operate in the same manner. Not the a-hole. It seems to me your brother needs more help than his wife. Ask him to go to therapist. Were your words not polite? Yes. Was it justified? Definitely. That was what the courts ordered him to do when Dex was removed. He never went to a single appointment. Wow, then you're definitely not the a-hole. I can't believe how incredibly selfish and immature your brother is. While I understand your brother is panicked to try to help his wife who has just a miscarriage, forcing a very young child to be responsible for a stepmother's mental well-being is not the way to go about it. I am incredibly sorry for Shanna's loss, and I'm glad to hear that she's getting help. But it's clear that your brother needs help too. I do think that a gentler conversation should be pursued about him getting help. From you, or from friends/relatives that he's comfortable with. That being said, you're not wrong to want to protect Dex from it all. Not the a-hole, but your brother needs help. And maybe Dex needs to be made aware of what's happening, in a way that'd be comprehensible to a 6-year-old. He's 12 now, and he was aware of what was going on with them. His dad used it to shame and talk down to him repeatedly. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help out with child's funeral expenses? My ex-wife lost her son recently who was 13. I'm not sure of the full details, but only that she's struggling with paying for the funeral. He's not my biological son, but for the first 5 months of his life, I thought he was. My wife had been awfully secretive, and I started to have my doubts when I learned she was having an affair. Apparently, the affair partner I caught her with was not even a father. We had a paternity test done to prove that. And neither was I. Tried to see if at least being in the boy's life would be a possibility, but ultimately it was too painful and I couldn't cope with the rage and hatred. We divorced. The only thing that kept me attached to either of them was the child support payments because she conveniently never looked for his biological father. My ex called my office recently wanting to talk and brought this whole thing up. I wanted to say so many things to her, but managed to at least tell her my condolences for her loss. But there's no way I'm going to help pay for all that even if she's struggling financially. She could set up a GoFundMe or do some fundraiser to make money, but do not ask me to pay more than what I've already had to. The conversation was going nowhere since she wouldn't stop begging me to change my mind. I hung up. Next in line to call was my mom. She's the only one in the family who stayed in her son's life, and I was fine with that as long as she didn't bother me with it. My mom's helping to pay for some of the expenses too, but she's asking me to please have a heart because he was my child at some period, and even if my ex doesn't deserve it, find it in me to do it anyways. I repeated what I told my ex, then reminded her that I'm currently expecting a child with my fiancé, and not going to waste thousands of dollars on a kid that wasn't mine in the end, when that's up to my ex to figure out. She's mad at me now, of course. So is my ex, who decided to blast the situation online. She made a post asking for donations since I'm refusing to help contribute, and specifically mentioned me so others are aware. My family is divided in this. Majority believe I'm the right, but the ones against it are being more vocal about it, and feel I am in a way being an A because she's a mother who just lost her son. Having a hard time seeing it that way, so that's why I'd like to ask here. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Wanted to add since some are asking. Yes, the child support was for him. That was the decision the court made in the end since I had been playing an active role in his life as a dad for months, and since I'm listed on the birth certificate as his father. Paternity test says otherwise, but in the end it didn't matter. Just wanted to clarify. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Sure, she has lost her son, and that's a horrible situation to be in. However, you are not responsible for the place she found herself in. From your story, it seems like you paid 13 years of child support for a kid who was not yours. That's already a lot. Not the a-hole. If she's blasting you online, you would be justified in making your own post detailing how she betrayed and deceived you, and how this wasn't your child. I've thought about that, but I'm not sure if I want to get further involved in this situation than I already am. Everyone knows she cheated. They all know her son wasn't mine, and that I wasn't involved since. OP, follow your instincts and don't make a post. There's no situation where you put a grieving mother on blast and look like the good guy. Not the a-hole. You spent 13 years paying child support for a child that wasn't yours. I think you've paid your share. Anyone who thinks you should pay has the ability to open their wallet and make a contribution themselves. This right here. Opie has no more responsibility or investment in this situation than literally anyone else on this planet. Anyone saying Opie should pay needs to open their wallets and contribute first. Charity starts at home. Nobody will though. Funny how quick people are to try and spend somebody else's money for them. Not Dayhole. Did I read this correctly? You were paying child support even though a paternity test showed you were not a father. My heart goes out to anyone who has lost a child, but you have no legal or moral obligation to help pay for anything. And for her to put you on blast for it is not right. She's grieving, so please don't let it get to you. I would not engage her or anyone in any further conversations about this other than to state you are not the child's father and have no obligation to the situation. And if they feel so strongly about it, they can help her pay for it. Next story. Am I the a-hole for calling my mother out on social media for the real reason she didn't go to my sister's funeral? So last year, my 30 female sister 40 passed away suddenly, and because of the pandemic, we were limited to the number of people we could invite to the funeral. And as my sister's next of kin, the decision fell to me to choose who would come. We both went no contact with our mother when we moved out because of how she mistreated us, but I kept her on Facebook in case of family emergencies. So I informed her of my sister's death and that she wasn't invited to the funeral. It was a unanimous decision with the rest of the family that she wasn't to come, not just me. Now fast forward to yesterday, and I was scrolling through Facebook. It was the anniversary yesterday, and on my mother's wall was a post about how it was a shame she couldn't go to my sister's funeral. But because she was high risk, she decided not to go and allow someone else to go instead. I saw red and replied to the post about how she was lying and that she wasn't invited because of what she did to us, and that my sister wouldn't have wanted her there anyway, and not because she was high risk as she said. Her husband messaged me this morning saying I was a a-hole, and now my mother is getting ostracized and her friends are ignoring her, and that I could have asked to take the post down in the PMs instead of being public. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. She made the thing public. Your response was in the same forum. Virtue signaling for sympathy to play the victim when she was in fact the abuser is just a continuation of the same behavior. That's the risk you take for internet karma when you make fake sympathy posts. Someone will call you out on it. Oh no. Your mother posted, expecting sympathy likes, playing the selfless grieving parent, and you shot her down in flames? Bravo. It seems like she's been lying to her friends. It has been exposed by her own arrogance. Not the a-hole. I'm sorry about your sister. I hope you're doing okay. I was in a bad place yesterday. Also realized I shouldn't have gone on Facebook, but lessons learned. I'm doing better though. I've calmed down now and feeling better. You returned the pain to sender. Well done. Let her keep it, and you can breathe again. My condolences. Not the a-hole, just not the a-hole. She mistreated you guys, then lied on Facebook about not being able to come because she's high risk. Not the a-hole. She knows you are friends on Facebook, so you have a chance to see her lies. She wants to lie and play stupid games. She gets to win the stupid prizes. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for snapping back at my stepsister when she asked if I was going to name my daughter after her grandma? I, 26 female, am not close to my step-family. I have a good relationship with my mom, but that's about it. I have 3 step-siblings. Kate, 26 female, Peter, 24 male, and Laura, 18 female. The reason I say I'm not close to them is I'm not close to any of them and never was. Their grandma / my stepfather's mother died a couple of years ago, and they were all very close to her, and Kate was especially so. I'm 6 months pregnant with a girl, announced on Facebook for all those not close to us a week ago. Said we had a name and would not be revealing in the comments in response to someone. 2 days after the post, Kate and I are at my mom at her dad's house, where she comes up to me all annoyed and says, "I'm not naming my kid after her grandmother, am I?" This came out of nowhere. Not one word spoken in 20 minutes beforehand, and then she throws that at me like I gave any indication that I was naming her after the woman. I snapped back, why would I name my child after her stepsister's grandmother? That she had no reason to think I would ever do that. Curious saying, good. It's not your name to use. And then my stepfather getting pissed that I would talk to his daughter like that, but mostly say what I did about his mom. He seems to believe I should want to use his mom's name for my kid. My mom told them there was no need to fight about this, and she and I weren't close, so it makes sense I wouldn't think of using the name. He still thinks I'm a prick though. My stepfather asked me to apologize for disrespecting his family, but especially his daughter and mother. And Kate is now posting on social media that I rudely rejected their family. Coming from the girl who has nothing to do with Laura because they're not full sisters, but that's beside the point. I just find it hypocritical. Am I the a-hole for how I responded? Now for the comments. The reason I say I'm not close to them is I am not close to any of them. Thank you for clearing that up. Not the a-hole. That's my favorite part. Not the a-hole, Opie. You matched her tone and they got mad. Stepsister unprompted. You better not be using my grandma's name. You have no right. Opie. Lol, why the hell would I use your grandma's name? Stepdad. The disrespect. How can you not want to use the name we don't want you to use? Not the a-hole. They seem mad they can't deny you something. Like they wanted to be able to tell you no. Lol, right? There was no winning here. Either she starts World War III by considering the name, or she deeply wounds the entire Step family by not considering it. No wonder they are not close because they are not close. They are difficult because they are difficult. Good grief. Huge not the a-hole. I'm not sure when your mother remarried, but it seems like Kate's father never even made an attempt to try and connect with you. He should get over himself at his high-mindedness. You don't have to apologize for answering Kate's question, and if he should be mad at anyone, it should be at her for asking. Since I was 9, I think. I know that's how long we've been in each other's lives, but honestly, we were never exactly family. Wow, that's earlier than I thought. From what I read, I would have assumed it was an extremely late marriage after you'd been grown up. He's usually the a-hole and doesn't see you as family, just as an old roommate or something. He has no right, especially since Kate asked you an invasive question that you already said you wouldn't tell the name till the baby was born. They need to get over themselves. Yeah, a lot of people assume things were a certain way because of the dynamics. They assume my mom married her husband when we were all older because of the lack of family, anything between us. They assume Kate and Peter were raised in a different household to Laura because you would never realize they're siblings. They have no relationship, but that's just the way things have always been. I'm still not sure why she thought I would ever name my child after her grandmother. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my wife if she insists that my sister move out, I won't defend her or her choice? I, 34 male, am married with 2 kids, 3 female and 3 female. And over the past year, my sister Amy, 19 female, has been living with me and my wife, Leah, 36 female, because of the pandemic. My parents live in another state, and the only reason they felt comfortable with Amy going to college out of state was because my wife and I promised to be there for her in case of trouble. After the shutdown, Amy moved in with us, and eventually decided to take some time off because she felt too stressed out. Initially, Leia seemed fine with that because Amy got a job and started helping around the house. Examples: doing all the laundry, cleaning the living room, doing the grocery shopping, paying for the groceries, cooking breakfast 4 days a week, cooking dinner 3 days a week, cleaning the kitchen, vacuuming, and babysitting so long as we gave her 48-hour notice. Amy did all of this to show how grateful she was to us, and because she wasn't paying rent. After Amy got a job, I sat down with her and worked out budgeting system with her, so once she went back to school, she could put her money towards college expenses. She rarely buys any luxuries for herself, and asks me to double-check her finances regularly so I know she's not just blowing it. I thought everything was great, until Leia told me that she wanted Amy out. When I inquired why, she at first didn't give a real reason for me to support it. And then I found out that Leia's cousin got a new job near where we lived and needed a place to stay, and would offer to pay us rent until they got their own place. Leia feels like Amy has stayed long enough, and wants someone who can offer financial contribution. I told her that I didn't support this decision, and would not be kicking my baby sister out when she's putting in the work to better herself. I was upset, and said that if she wanted Amy out, then she'd have to tell her herself, but warned her that my parents would see her as greedy and not expect me to defend her. Now Leia isn't talking to me, and after a couple of days I need to ask, am I the a-hole? Edited to add. Forgot to add, sorry. But yes, I did run Amy paying rent by Leia as a compromise. However, Amy barely makes above minimum wage, and even if she factored in paying rent, it wouldn't be nearly as much as what Leia's cousin is offering. Also, it hasn't been explicitly said, but it looks like Leia's cousin will pay rent but not help around the house. At most, just clean up after themselves. Not Dayhall. Your sister was not leeching. In fact, she contributed a lot to the household by doing all the chores you listed. It might cost way more to hire someone to do all that for you than your wife's cousin would potentially pay in rent. So financial argument is sort of invalid. Exactly. Unless the cousin is going to be paying enough rent to cover the house payment, or the entire rent payment if Opie's renting. But then they will be worse off if Amy's told to go. All the stuff she's doing is allowing Leia to get a nice break from all that stuff. I would let Amy live with me rent-free too, if she was doing all that and I don't even have small kids for babysitting duty. Not Dayhall. Also make sure she knows that if she kicks out your sister, that you won't allow her cousin to move in. If she tries to argue that this is her house too, then respond exactly. It's our house. Neither of us gets unilateral control over what happens. If you have the right to nix my sister staying here, then I have the right to nix your cousin staying here. This right here, I really hope more people see this comment. It's not right for her to be able to make those kinds of decisions on her own. If she doesn't want a sister, great. But if he doesn't want a cousin to live there, then they can't. They both have to agree on who lives in their house, not just her. If she can veto someone, he can too. Not Dayhall. Your wife is committing familial harakiri. Absolutely not. She will alienate your whole family forever over a few bucks. Just no. Not Dayhall. You're not even straight up telling her no. You're saying that if she makes this decision, she has to face the consequences. What did she think would happen otherwise? That you'd somehow talk your family down and convince them that she made the right choice?